Season's greetings, and welcome to Wings to Fly Dreams, audio and ASMR. We are commencing Stave 2 of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, this stave being titled The First of the Three Spirits. This spirit we encounter in Stave 2 is that of Christmas past, and thus the, as you can see, second item that I have added to our little tableau is a box, representing Scrooge visiting his memories. Because that's an analogy that I've always thought is cool in movies when they use that. And I love this box because I found it at a craft store, and it has little elves on it. Look, and they all have different skin tones, and it makes me so happy because representation is amazing. So yeah. To continue with the story of Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed, he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber. He was endeavoring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes when the chimes of a neighboring church struck the 4 quarters. So he listened for the hour. To his great astonishment, the heavy bell went on from 6 to 7 and from 7 to 8 and regularly up to 12, then stopped. 12? It was past 2 when he went to bed. The clock was wrong. An icicle must have gotten to the works. 12? He touched the spring of his repeater to correct this most preposterous clock. Its rapid little pulse beat 12, and stopped. "Why, it isn't possible," said Scrooge, "that I can have slept through a whole day and far into another night. It isn't possible that anything has happened to the sun, and this is 12 at noon." The idea being an alarming one, he scrambled out of bed and groped his way to the window. He was obliged to rub the frost off with the sleeve of his dressing gown before he could see anything, and could see very little then. All he could make out was that it was still very foggy and extremely cold, and that there was no noise of people running to and fro and making a great stir, as there unquestionably would have been if night had beaten off bright day and taken possession of the world. This was a great relief, because 3 days after sight of this first of exchange pay to Mr. Ebenezer Scrooge or his order, and so forth, would have become a mere United States security if there were no days to count by. I think that's a poke at the United States economy at this time in 1843, of which there was, let's see, I know there was a repression that happened in like the 1880s, but the 1840s I'm not really sure what was going on with the United States economy, so that's kind of fun. Scrooge went to bed again and thought and thought and thought and thought it over and over and over and could make nothing of it. The more he thought, the more perplexed he was, and the more he endeavored not to think, the more he thought. That sounds like the experience of having generalized anxiety disorder, but that being your constant life. Happy Scrooge for only having to deal with that on this night. Marley's ghost bothered him exceedingly. Every time he resolved within himself, after mature inquiry, that it was all a dream, his mind flew back again, like a strong spring released, to its first position, and presented the same problem to be worked all through. Was it a dream or not? Again, anxiety. Scrooge lay in this state until the chimes had gone 3 quarters more, when he remembered, on a sudden, that the ghost had warned him of a visitation when the bell tolled 1. He resolved to lie awake until the hour was past, and considering that he could no more sleep than go to heaven, this was perhaps the wisest resolution in his power. The quarter was so long that he was more than once convinced he must have sunk into a doze unconsciously and missed the clock. At length it broke upon his listening ear. "Ding dong, 1/4 past," said Scrooge, counting. "Ding dong, 1/2 past," said Scrooge. "Ding dong, 1/4 to it," said Scrooge. "Ding dong, the hour itself," said Scrooge triumphantly, "and nothing else." He spoke before the hour bell sounded, which it now did with a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, I tell you, by a hand. Not the curtains at his feet, nor the curtains at his back, but those to which his face was addressed. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge, starting up into a half recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them, as close to it as I am now to you, and I am standing in the spirit at your elbow. That is adorable. It was as close to Scrooge as I am to you, and I am with you in spirit, dear reader. It was was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. The arms were very long and muscular, the hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were like those upper members, bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and in a singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light, by which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using, in its duller moments, a great extinguisher for a cap, which it now held under its arm. Even this, though, when Scrooge looked at it with increasing steadiness, he wasn't that steady when he first started looking at the spirit, was not its strangest quality. For as its belt sparkled and glittered, now in one part and now in another, and what was light one instant at another time was dark, so the figure itself fluctuated in its distinctness, being now a thing with one arm, now with one leg, now with 20 legs, now a pair of legs without a head, now a head without a body, of which dissolving parts no outline would be visible in the dense gloom wherein they melted away. And in the very wonder of this, it would be itself again, distinct and clear as ever. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" asked Scrooge. "I am." I had to check and see what the voice was that I had planned for the Ghost of Christmas Past. Also, I am completely self-aware of the fact that Scrooge, the main character of this book that I'm reading aloud, his voice that I assigned to him is the one that has fluctuated with the most mercurial tendencies. Anyway, no, I get it. He's only the main character, and I can't seem to figure out how to voice him. It's fine, except I'm a little sad about that, but again, it's fine. By, like, the fifth stave, I'll finally figure it out. It's just difficult, because, like, it says his voice was grating, and so I'm like, okay, gravelly. But it's hard for me to, like, give vocal nuance in just, like, a low, gravelly sort of voice. So I'm doing my best. The voice was soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close beside him, it were at a distance. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the Ghost of Christmas Past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge, observant of its dwarfish nature. "No, your past." Perhaps Scrooge could not have told anybody why, if anybody could have asked him, but he had a special desire to see the spirit in his cap, and begged him to be covered. "What?" exclaimed the ghost. "Would you so soon put out with worldly hands the light I give? Is it not enough that you are one of those whose passions made this cap, and force me through whole trains of years to wear it low upon my brow?" Scrooge reverently disclaimed all intention to offend, or any knowledge of having wilfully bonneted the spirit at any period of his life. He then made bold to inquire what business brought him there. "Your welfare," said the ghost. Scrooge expressed himself much obliged, but could not help thinking that a night of unbroken rest would have been more conducive to that end. The spirit must have heard him thinking, for it said immediately, "Your reclamation, then. Take heed." It put out its strong hand as it spoke, and clasped him gently by the arm. "Rise, and walk with me." It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead. The weather and the hour were not adapted to pedestrian purposes. The bed was warm, and the thermometer a long way below freezing, that he was clad but lightly in his slippers, dressing gown, and nightcap, and that he had a cold upon him at the time. The grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but finding that the spirit made towards the window, clasped its robe in supplication. "I am a mortal," Scrooge remonstrated, "and liable to fall." "Bear but a touch of my hand there," said the spirit, laying it upon his heart, "and you shall be upheld in more than this." As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. Not a vestige of it was to be seen. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day, with snow upon the ground. "Good heavens," said Scrooge, clasping his hands together as he looked about him. "I was bred in this place. I was a boy here." The spirit gazed upon him mildly. Its gentle touch, though it had been light and instantaneous, appeared still present to the old man's sense of feeling. He was conscious of 1,000 odors floating in the air, each one connected with 1,000 thoughts, and hopes, and joys, and cares long, long forgotten. "Your lip is trembling," said the ghost. "And what is that upon your cheek?" Scrooge muttered, with an unusual catching in his voice, that it was a pimple, and begged the ghost to lead him where he would. "You recollect the way?" inquired the spirit. "Remember it?" cried Scrooge with fervor. "I could walk it blindfold." "Strange to have forgotten it for so many years," observed the ghost. "Let us go on." They walked along the road, Scrooge recognizing every gate and post and tree, until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church, and winding river. Some shaggy ponies were now seen trotting toward them, with boys upon their backs, who called to other boys in country gigs and carts driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits, and shouted to each other until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. "These are but shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost. "They have no consciousness of us." The jocund travelers came on. Jocund travelers? Sure. The jocund travelers came on, and as that means jolly, but that's why I'm like, jocund? And I didn't think of jolly until I explained what jocund was, but then I was like, maybe jolly, jocund, I don't know. The jolly travelers came on, and as they came, Scrooge knew and named them every one. Why was he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Why did his cold eye glisten and his heart leap up as they went past? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas as they parted at crossroads and byways for their several homes? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas! What good had it ever done to him? "The school is not quite deserted," said the ghost. "A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still." Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. They left the high road by a well-remembered lane, and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick, with a little weathercock-surmounted cupola on the roof and a bell hanging in it. It was a large house, but one of broken fortunes, for the spacious offices were little used, their walls were damp and mossy, their windows broken, and their gates decayed. Fowls clucked and strutted in the stables, and the coach-houses and sheds were overrun with grass. Nor was it more retentive of its ancient state within, for entering the dreary hall, and glancing through the open doors of many rooms, they found them poorly furnished, cold, and vast. There was an earthy savour in the air, a chilly bareness in the place, which associated itself somehow with too much getting up by candlelight, and not too much to eat. They went, the ghost and Scrooge, across the hall to a door at the back of the house. It opened before them and disclosed a long, bare, melancholy room, made barer still by lines of plain deal forms and desks. Deal forms? Okay. We've hit upon something that now I need to look up. Oh, my laptop is dead. Nope, not dead. Okay, happy day. I need to figure out what's going on with this laptop, because it tends to, like, when I close it, eventually it, like, seems to turn off, and I have to, like, press the on button, but it hasn't closed off. It just, I don't know what's going on. So, yes, what am I looking at? Deal forms? Deal forms at a school in 1843 England. Well, it actually would have been like 1800. Well, I think what it's saying essentially is that this is a school for poorer children. This is not a fancy school, which we'd kind of concluded that by the description of the house. That house is the school, but okay, moving on. Because when I looked at deal forms without the addendum, it was just like, these are legal documents, and I'm like, thank you so much. And then when I put in deal forms at a school in 1843 England, it brought up Ragged School in Wikipedia. Ragged schools were charitable organizations dedicated to the free education of destitute children in 19th century Britain. So none of this completely and precisely defining what plain deal forms written here was meant by Mr. Charles Dickens, but Anyway, moving on. So, there's a bunch of desks. At one of these, a lonely boy was reading near a feeble fire, and Scrooge sat down upon a form and wept to see his poor forgotten self as he had used to be. Okay, this makes no sense. 1 second. Plain deal forms and desks. I'll just put in the whole. Okay, it references Christmas Carol, but not what does web browser senpai. I feel like you're just being silly at this point. What does plain deal forms and desks mean? In a Christmas Carol. Oh, okay. I feel like I'm cheating because this is from the AI overview, but okay, I'm just going to read from the AI overview because I don't want to spend a long time researching this. So hopefully this AI overview is not lying to me. Yes, so plain deal is referring to a type of pine or fir wood, plain indicating that it is unadorned and basic, and it is the forms and desks. Forms are long, simple benches, and desks are simple writing surfaces. So, yeah. Okay, so I completely lied to previously. Well, no, I completely misunderstood some of what was said previously. So, forms are apparently benches. So basically the line is just saying plain wooden benches and desks. And Scrooge sat down upon a desk and wept to see his poor forgotten self as he had used to be. So yes, I'm sure that you were burning with curiosity about all that. Not a latent echo in the house, not a squeak and scuffle from the mice behind the panelling, not a drip from the half-thawed water-spout in the dull yard behind, not a sigh among the leafless boughs of one despondent poplar, not the idle swinging of an empty storehouse door, no, not a clicking in the fire, but fell upon the heart of Scrooge with softening influence, and gave a freer passage to his tears. The spirit touched him on the arm, and pointed to his younger self, intent upon his reading. Suddenly a man in foreign garments, wonderfully real and distinct to look at, stood outside the window, with an axe stuck in his belt, and leading an ass laden with wood by the bridle. "Why, it's Ali Baba!" Scrooge exclaimed in ecstasy. "It's dear old honest Ali Baba. Yes, I know. One Christmas time, when yonder solitary child was left here all alone, he did come for the first time, just like that. Poor boy. And Valentine," said Scrooge, "and his wild brother Orson. There they go. And what's his name, who's put down in his drawers asleep at the gate of Damascus. Don't you see it? And the Sultan's groom turned upside down by the genie. There he is upon his head. Serve him right, I'm glad of it. What business had he to be married to the princess?" This is referring to the book of what's it called? Arabian Nights, and specifically some of this Ali Baba being from Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, the story. To hear Scrooge expending all the earnestness of his nature on such subjects in a most extraordinary voice between laughing and crying, well, that wasn't the voice that I put it in, I'm sorry, and to see his heightened and excited face would have been a surprise to his business friends in the city indeed. "There's the parrot!" cried Scrooge. "Green body and yellow tail, with a thing like a lettuce growing out of the top of his head. There he is! Poor Robin Crusoe, he called him, when he came home again after sailing round the island. Poor Robin Crusoe, where have you been, Robin Crusoe?" The man thought he was dreaming, but he wasn't. It was the parrot, you know. There goes Friday, running for his life to the little creek. Hallo! Whoop! Halloo! That's referencing Robinson Crusoe, the one about, you probably like, Robinson Crusoe, and Friday is the black man, so unimaginatively named by Robinson Crusoe. Running for his life to the little creek is when Robinson Crusoe first meets Friday. He's in some sort of danger. I'm trying to remember. Is he fighting? I have only ever read a condensed version of that book, and it was a long, long time ago when I would have been in probably at the oldest in junior high when I last read that. And so that was over 20 years ago. We're going to forgive me for not remembering most of it. Then, with a rapidity of transition very foreign to his usual character, he said in pity for his former self, "Poor boy," and cried again. "I wish," Scrooge muttered, putting his hand in his pocket and looking about him after drying his eyes with his cuff. "But it's too late now." "What is the matter?" asked the spirit. "Nothing," said Scrooge, "nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something. That's all." The ghost smiled thoughtfully and waved its hand, saying as it did so, "Let us see another Christmas." Scrooge's former self grew larger at the words, and the room became a little darker and more dirty. The panels shrunk, the windows cracked, fragments of plaster fell out of the ceiling, and the naked laths were shown instead, ceiling beams. But how all this was brought about, Scrooge knew no more than you do. He only knew that it was quite correct, that everything had happened so, that there he was, alone again, when all the other boys had gone home for their jolly holidays. Oh, it's a jolly holiday with Mary. Moving on. He was not reading now, but walking up and down despairingly. Scrooge looked at the ghost, and with a mournful shaking of his head, glanced anxiously towards the door. It opened, and a little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in, and put her arms around his neck, and often kissing him, addressed him as her dear, dear brother. "I have come to bring you home, dear brother," said the child, clapping her tiny hands and bending down to laugh. "To bring you home, home, home." "Home, little fan," returned the boy. "Yes," said the child, brimful of glee. "Home for good and all, home for ever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be that home's like heaven. He spoke so gently to me one dear night when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said, yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you're to be a man," said the child, opening her eyes, "and are never to come back here. But first we have to be together all the Christmas long and have the merriest time in all the world." "You are quite a woman, little fan," exclaimed the boy. She clapped her hands and laughed, and tried to touch his head, but being too little, laughed again, and stood on tiptoe to embrace him. Then she began to drag him in her childish eagerness towards the door, and he, nothing loath to go, accompanied her. A terrible voice in the hall cried, "Bring down Master Scrooge's box there!" And in the hall appeared the schoolmaster himself, who glared on Master Scrooge with a ferocious condescension, and threw him in a dreadful state of mind by shaking hands with him. He then conveyed him and his sister into the veriest old well of a shivering best parlour that ever was seen, where the maps upon the wall and the celestial and terrestrial globes in the windows were waxy with cold. Here he produced a decanter of curiously light wine and a box of curiously heavy cake, and administered installments of those dainties to the young people, at the same time sending out a meagre servant to offer a glass of something to the postboy, who answered that he thanked the gentleman, but if it was the same tap as he had tasted before, he had rather not. Master Scrooge's trunk being by this time tied up to the top of the chaise, the children bade the schoolmaster good-bye right willingly, and getting into it, drove gaily down the garden sweep, the quick wheels dashing the hoarfrost and snow from off the dark leaves of the evergreens like spray. "Always a delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered," said the ghost, "but she had a large heart." "So she had," cried Scrooge. "You're right, I will not gainsay it, spirit. God forbid." "She died a woman," said the ghost, "and had, as I think, children." "One child," Scrooge returned. "True," said the ghost. "Your nephew." Scrooge seemed uneasy in his mind, and answered briefly, "Yes." Although they had but that moment left the school behind them, they were now in the busy thoroughfares of a city, where shadowy strangers passed and repassed, where shadowy carts and coaches battled for the way, and all the strife and tumult of a real city were. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here, too, it was Christmas time again, but it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door, and asked Scrooge if he knew it. "Know it?" said Scrooge. "Well, I apprenticed here." They went in, at sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig, sitting behind such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling. Scrooge cried in great excitement, "Why, it's old Fezziwig! Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again!" Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked up at the clock, which pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself from his shoes to his organ of benevolence, and called out in a comfortable, oily, rich, fat, jovial voice, "Yo-ho there! Ebenezer! Dick!" Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. "Dick Wilkins, to be sure," said Scrooge to the ghost. "Bless me, yes, there he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick, dear, dear." "Yo-ho, my boys," said Fezziwig. "No more work tonight. Christmas Eve! Christmas Eve, Dick! Christmas, Ebenezer! Let's have the shutters up!" cried old Fezziwig with a sharp cup of his hands, before a man can say Jack Robinson. You wouldn't believe how those two fellows went at it. They charged into the street with the shutters. 1, 2, 3, had 'em up in their places. 4, 5, 6, barred 'em and pinned 'em. 7, 8, 9, and came back before you could have got to 12, panting like racehorses. Shuttering up your shop for the end of the day, actually, literally at that day, meant like hammering on covers of the windows. "Hilly-ho!" cried old Fezziwig, skipping down from the high desk with wonderful agility. "Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly-ho, Dick! Chirp, Ebenezer!" Clear away? There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away or couldn't have cleared away with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off as if it were dismissed from public life forevermore. The floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright as a ballroom, as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book, and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it, and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. Oh dear. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the housemaid with her cousin the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend the milkman. In came the boy from over the way, who was suspected of not having board enough from his master, trying to hide himself behind the girl from next door, but one who was proved to have had her ears pulled by her mistress. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. Big picture in the book. But they all came, anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couple at once, half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate grouping. Old top couple always turning up in the wrong place, new top couple starting off again as soon as they got there, all top couples at last, and not a bottom one to help them. When this result was brought about, old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!" And the fiddler plunged his hot face into a pot of porter, specially provided for that purpose. But scorning rest upon his reappearance, he instantly began again, though there were no dances yet, as if the other fiddler had been carried home exhausted on a shutter, and he were a brand new man resolved to beat him out of sight or perish. There were more dances, and there were forfeits, and more dances, and there was cake, and there was negus, and there was a great piece of cold roast. I'm going to assume that negus is a type of drink, because my laptop has officially died because it's not plugged in. Oh, 1 second, I have them plugged in. Here we go. But it's going to take a bit for it to remember the fact that it used to exist as a laptop. So anyway, maybe I'll remember to look that up. And there was a great piece of cold roast, and there was a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies and plenty of beer. So cold roast and cold boiled, big pieces of meat. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled, when the fiddler, an artful dog mind, the sort of man who knew his business better than you or I could have told it him, struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig set out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Top couple too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them. 3 or 4 and 20 pair of partners, people who were not to be trifled with, people who would dance and had no notion of walking. But if they had been twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so would Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the term. If that's not high praise, tell me higher, and I'll use it. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone in every part of the dance like moons. You couldn't have predicted at any given time what would become of them next. And when old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig had gone all through the dance, advance and retire, hold hands with your partner, bow and curtsy, corkscrew, thread the needle and back again to your place, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs, and came upon his feet again without a stagger. I think cut is clicking your heels together. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but the 2 prentices, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads were left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop. During the whole of this time, Scrooge had acted like a man out of his wits. His heart and soul were in the scene, and with his former self, he corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything, and underwent the strangest agitation. It was not until now, when the bright faces of his former self and Dick were turned from him, that he remembered the ghost, and became conscious that it was looking full upon him, while the light upon its head burnt very clear. "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folks so full of gratitude." "Small?" echoed Scrooge. The spirit signed to him to listen to the two apprentices, who were pouring out their hearts in praise of Fezziwig, and when he had done so, said, "Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves his praise?" "It isn't that," said Scrooge, heated by the remark, and speaking unconsciously, like his former, not his latter self. "It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count him up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune." He felt the spirit's glance, and stopped. "What is the matter?" asked the ghost. "Nothing particular," said Scrooge. "Something, I think." "No," said Scrooge, "no. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all." His former self turned down the lamps as he gave utterance to the wish, and the Scrooge and the ghost again stood side by side in the open air.
"My laptop is alive again. It has returned. Which means that the happy little pages I had up are not gonna be. Go away, silly computer. I'm aware you think that, but I'm not interested. Oh, but I could go to history and restore tabs, right?
Magic! I opened up the browser and everything popped up, same as it had been. Well, that's fancy. That sounded a little bit like Carol Burnett just now. Yes. What is oh. Oh, it's a drink. Oh, I was right. It's a hot spiced drink made from port wine, hot water, sugar, and lemon, similar to a mulled wine. Okay, so just Christmas punch. I need to adjust my positioning because my leg is falling asleep. It's fine, minor details. By the way, if you ever have the opportunity to get a couch, I would not suggest getting a faux leather one. They're annoying. And they creak when you move in them. Alright. My time grows short, observed the spirit. Quick. This was not addressed to Scrooge or to anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. For again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life. His face had not the harsh and rigid lines of later years, but it had begun to wear the signs of care and avarice. There was an eager, greedy, restless motion in the eye, which showed the passion that had taken root, and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a mourning dress, in whose eyes there were tears which sparkled in the light that shone out of the ghost of Christmas past. "It matters little," she said softly. "To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in time to come as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve." "What idol has replaced you?" he rejoined. "A golden one." "This is the even-handed dealing of the world," he said. "There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth." "You fear the world too much," she answered gently. "All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not?" "What then?" he retorted. "Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I'm not changed towards you." She shook her head. "Am I?" "Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until in good season we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man." "I was a boy," he said impatiently. "Your own feeling tells you that you were not what you are," she returned. "I am. That which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two." That's cool, two in heart versus one in heart. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I will not say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you. Have I ever sought release? In words? No, never. In what then? In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, another hope as its great end, in everything that made my love of any worth or value in your sight. If this had never been between us, said the girl, looking mildly but with steadiness upon him, tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now? Ah, no. He seemed to yield to the justice of this supposition in spite of himself, but he said with a struggle, You think not. I would gladly think otherwise if I could, she answered. Heaven knows, when I have learned a truth like this, I know how strong and irresistible it must be. But if you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can even I believe that you would choose a dowerless girl, you who in your very confidence with her weigh everything by gain, or choosing her if for a moment you were false enough to your one guiding principle to do so, do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do, and I release you, with a full heart for the love of him you once were. He was about to speak, but with her head turned from him, she resumed, You may, the memory of what is past half makes me hope you will, have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you will dismiss the recollection of it gladly as an unprofitable dream, from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen. She left him, and they parted. Spirit, said Scrooge, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me? One shadow more, exclaimed the ghost. No more, cried Scrooge, no more. I don't wish to see it. Show me no more. But the relentless ghost pinioned him in both his arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene and place, a room not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like the last that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw her, now a comely matron, sitting opposite her daughter. The noise in this room was perfectly tumultuous, for there were more children there than Scrooge, in his agitated state of mind, could count, and unlike the celebrated herd in the poem, they were not 40 children conducting themselves like one, but every child was conducting itself like 40. I don't know what this poem is, but it sounds funny. The comparison sounds fun. 40 children conducting themselves like one. Instead of just, let's see. 40 children conducting themselves as one. So this is fun because I never look some of the stuff up. What was the poem? Oh, for heaven's sake. Poem. But what? It says that the celebrated herd in the poem. According to Answers.com, Dickens is referring to the poem by William Wordsworth called Written in March, where the cattle, herd, were conducting themselves as one in their spring. Okay. The consequences were uproarious beyond belief, but no one seemed to care. On the contrary, the mother and daughter laughed heartily and enjoyed it very much, and the latter, soon beginning to mingle in the sports, got pillaged by the young brigands most ruthlessly. What would I not have given to be one of them? Though I never could have been so rude. No, I wouldn't for the wealth of all the world have crushed that braided hair and torn it down, and for the precious little shoe I wouldn't have plucked it off, God bless my soul, to save my life. As to measuring her waist in sport as they did, bold young brood, I couldn't have done it. I should have expected my arm to have grown round it for punishment and never come straight again. And yet I should have dearly liked, I own, to have touched her lips, to have questioned her, that she might have opened them, to have looked upon the lashes of her downcast eyes and never raised a blush, to have let loose waves of hair, an inch of which would be a keepsake beyond price. In short, I should have liked, I do confess, to have had the lightest license of a child, and yet been man enough to know its value. Well, did it get a little hot in here, or is it just me? When I read this when I was young, I did not understand that. That was so tender. Moving on. Fanning my face. But now a knocking at the door was heard, and such a rush immediately ensued that she with laughing dress and plundered face was borne No, Laughing Face in plundered dress was borne towards it the center of a flushed and boisterous group, just in time to greet the father, who came home attended by a man laden with Christmas toys and presents. Then the shouting and the struggling and the onslaught that was made on the defenseless porter, the scaling him with chairs for ladders to dive into his pockets, despoil him of brown paper parcels, hold on tight by his cravat, hug him round the neck, pummel his back, and kick his legs in irrepressible affection. This poor man! Oh my gosh. The shouts of wonder and delight with which the development of every package was received, the terrible announcement that the baby had been taken in the act of putting a doll's frying pan into his mouth, and was more than suspected of having swallowed a fictitious turkey glued on a wooden platter, the immense relief of finding this a false alarm, the joy and gratitude and ecstasy, they are all indescribable alike. It is enough that by degrees the children and their emotions got out of the parlour, and by one stair at a time up to the top of the house, where they went to bed, and so subsided. And now Scrooge looked on more attentively than ever, when the master of the house, having his daughter leaning fondly on him, sat down with her and her mother at his own fireside. And when he thought that such another creature, quite as graceful and as full of promise, might have called him father, and been a springtime in the haggard winter of his life, his sight grew very dim indeed. "Belle," said the husband, turning to his wife with a smile, "I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. Who was it?" "Guess." "How can I? I don't know," she added in the same breath, laughing as he laughed. "Mr. Scrooge?" "Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone. Quite alone in this world, I do believe." "Spirit," said Scrooge in a broken voice, "remove me from this place." "I told you these were shadows of the things that have been," said the ghost. "That they are what they are, do not blame me." "Remove me," Scrooge exclaimed. "I cannot bear it." He turned upon the ghost, and seeing that it looked upon him with a face, in which in some strange way there were fragments of all the faces it had shown him, wrestled with it. "Leave me! Take me back! Haunt me no longer!" In this struggle, if that can be called a struggle, in which the ghost, with no visible resistance on its own part, was undisturbed by any effort of its adversary, Scrooge observed that its light was burning high and bright, and dimly connecting that with its influence over him, he seized the extinguisher cap, and by a sudden action pressed it down upon its head. The spirit dropped beneath it, so that the extinguisher covered its whole form. But though Scrooge pressed it down with all his force, he could not hide the light, which streamed from under it in an unbroken flood upon the ground. He was conscious of being exhausted, and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being in his own bedroom. He gave the cap a parting squeeze, in which his hand relaxed, and had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. In one of the retellings of one of the cinematic retellings of A Christmas Carol, and I don't remember if it's the one from the 30s, the 40s, or the 50s that I grew up with, they have Isabel, or Belle, isn't her? I thought her full name was Isabel. Is it just Belle? Do we ever hear her full, Okay, nope, he doesn't say anything. He does not call her by name here, and we only ever hear her called Belle. Okay, moving on. Belle is his housekeeper. They have it that she never married, and that she's just kind of been living as a housekeeper off and on through the years. That sounds as if she's living off and on. She's been being a housekeeper in different places off and on through the years, and then she got older and she found Scrooge, and kind of, just, I guess, disguised herself a bit with a hat. I don't know. It's Hollywood. Hollywood half the time doesn't make any sense. And then became his housekeeper because she wanted to look after him and check in with him, kind of thing. And the idea of that is really sweet, and the movie ends with, the promise of now they're together and all is great and all is happy. But you know what? I have to say, I like the book version better, just because that meant that she had this shows that she had a good life, that she just, I think Belle is a really, really cool person, really cool character. Like, we see her in 2 scenes, and I always love how she's portrayed in the different Christmas carols. Well, Now that I say that, I can't actually remember how she's portrayed in the older ones. But I love how she's portrayed in the Albert Finney A Christmas Carol musical. And, oh no, that one's just called Scrooge. And also in the Kelsey Grammer A Christmas Carol, the music of which was done by the inimitable Alan Menken of Disney fame, who did Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Tangled, Beauty and the Beast. Oh, I already said Beauty and the Beast. What was the other one? Oh, Little Mermaid, Newsies, so many. Just such an incredible. Oh, nope, I don't think he was part of Hunchback of Notre Dame. But yes, I love that she wisely recognized the divergency that had occurred between her life choices and Scrooge's, that she so kindly and gently, but, firmly established a healthy boundary and said, no, this is not going to work between us. And then that she found a wonderful man and had a beautiful family. Like, I would love us. I have a book called Jacob T. Marley, which I'm actually reading at the moment. I've always wanted to read it. I've had it for a couple of years. And it's somebody that took the character of Marley and was like, okay, what's going on with Marley? What's his past and how is he involved in all this? And quite frankly, I'm not sure that I'm completely on board with how he's decided some of it went, but I'm enjoying it. It's kind of fun. I would love somebody to do that with the character of Belle. One of y'all or somebody in the world, could you please write one of those fun books that I think is so delightful that people do sometimes, of taking a character from one of the older books of this world and writing a book from that character's perspective, or about specifically that character? Could somebody do that with Belle's life and just create bring to life the telling of her existence? That would be fun. There's fun ones I've enjoyed. I can't remember who the author is, but there's an author who did Letters of Edward Bertram from the book by Jane Austen, Mansfield Park, which was very nice, because honestly, Edward Bertram bothers me. The portrayal in the book, where like the entire book, Fanny's just totally in love with him, and she's very innocent and very naive and has zero context to recognize that he is not interested in her at all, and he's just very, very kind, and she has taken, because of his kindness, she's totally crushing on him, and he's just oblivious of her most of the time. And then we get like a couple, actually I haven't read the book in years, but in my memory, we get like a couple paragraphs at the end of it just describing like, and as time went on, Edward realized that Fanny was super cool and they got, hitched. Absolutely a verbatim quote from the book written by Jane Austen. But anyway, so like, I enjoyed that book because it's very reflective. I think Fanny's really sweet. And it shows it's one of her books that can be the hardest for a modern reader to enjoy, because it is so steeped in the socializations of the time. But for that very reason, I find it quite an interesting read. This will end soon, folks, it's fine. But it's always bugged me that honestly, it's like, Edward, I'm sorry, you don't deserve Fanny. Like, she's this wonderful person that all these years you've been a friend to, but never been able to see that she is just absolutely in love with you. But not just that, like, it's not just that he's like blind to it, because she's quite shy about the idea of being in love with him, but like, he does not prioritize her. He does not value her. Like, he does sometimes, but then so other times he just doesn't. And anyway, I got bothered by that. Also, again, I have not read this since I was in my teens, so maybe I'm remembering it. I haven't read this since I was in my teens, and I've only ever seen one BBC adaptation of it, which, I'm sorry, was, in my personal opinion, not great, because the dear young woman that they chose to play Fanny, though a lovely human, absolutely, I personally don't think that maybe her acting skills are quite strong. So, minor details, she's just the main character of the book. Meanwhile, how did I get sidetracked onto this? Oh, yes. Anyway, some wonderful human of the modern age wrote a book that is the diary of Edward Bertram. No, he's Edmund. Is he Edmund Bertram? That's embarrassing. I think he's Edmund Bertram. I don't remember. It's been years. But anyway, I just love that. Somebody else, actually, I think it might be the same author, did one like letters from, what's Mr. Darcy's estate? Pemberley. Letters from Pemberley or something, which are letters of Elizabeth Bennet Darcy to Jane Bennet Bingley. And just a delightful concept. And so yes, I love that very much. So could somebody please do that one for Belle of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens? That would be fabulous. I hope you all taking care of yourselves the best you can. Please be gentle with yourselves. Please make sure that you're working at least to give yourselves what you might need. And sometimes what you might need, especially in this hustle-bustle season of the year, is a little peace and quiet. There is nothing wrong with just scheduling aside time for yourself to be yourself and get resettled. There's nothing wrong with that. And definitely nothing wrong with that during the holiday season. I hope you're doing well, little goblins again. I gotta reach my hand up. Rock on, little goblins, and loves. Bye.